Dr. Peggy Gordon Miller, an influential academic leader, was born in Kentucky's Jackson Purchase region. She has served as Chancellor and President of the University of Akron, and later came to South Dakota State University, where she was appointed as the university's first female president. At South Dakota State University, Dr. Miller oversaw diverse educational expansion, and the most significant program development under her leadership was the move to Division I athletics, which has resulted in national recognition of the university's excellence. Her career earned her numerous honorary degrees and distinguished awards, and her impact through education has been felt by many.
Thank you so very much. I must thank you and tell you how humbled I am to be invited into this distinguished group of citizens. You are all remarkable, as these stories have told you. Unfortunately, my history with South Dakota starts with South Dakota State, so that has to be my family story tonight. But I had some role models that made a huge difference. The women in my family were all expected to do something. Now, of course, they were wives and mothers and helped with crops and picking and all sorts of things, but they were expected to do whatever they were able to do. So one grandmother assisted the Frontier Nursing Service as a midwife when Goodrich started that program to get indigent women in the mountains of Kentucky assistance with their births. So that was pretty strong stuff. My mother followed in her footsteps as a nurse, and all the way through my life. And my other grandmother moved to a town where they didn't have a church and was appalled. So she wrote to all the denominations she knew about and said they had to have a church. Couldn't they come? And so the Methodists were the only ones that answered her, and she decided God wanted them to be Methodists. So it was expected that we had to do. My mother's other remarks to me always were, do your best and God will do the rest. And if he doesn't, you weren't supposed to have it anyway. But sometimes in later years, she would say, if you don't get it, she didn't want to have you get it anyway. So anyway, when I came to South Dakota, I also had one other role model, and that was my daughter, Ann, who was born visually handicapped. She was blind. And I watched her grow strong, get 2 college degrees in graduate work, and have a living of her own. And her toughness, her ability to overcome without whining was just wonderful. Her first sporting event was a swimming meet. And when she called me from the town where the meet was being held, and the swimming coach had told me, you know, she probably won't win anything. This is a tough team. But Ann always thought swimming was her sport because you didn't have to see anything. All you had to do was not crack your head when you got to the end of the pool. Anyway, she called me from the meet and said, Mother, it's fabulous. I haven't come in last in anything. So with Ann passed away about 10 years ago. Women in that life, women like that in my life, they gave me lots of role models and gave me expectations I knew I'd better meet. And so that's what I've always tried to do. My life with South Dakota started when I came to South Dakota State to be president. And some of you do not know, probably none of you know except my table, that I've chosen to stay in South Dakota and have bought a house here for permanent residence. So, but after an evening like this, where else would you want to live? some people are cranky around this world, and some of them just not nice, but not here. This is great. Well, when I got to South Dakota State University, I didn't think we had all the things we should be doing for our students. But I want to thank the citizens and the legislators who over the years kept funding steady for our state universities so that our sons and daughters could have good educations. And I think that made a big difference. I also want to thank the parents who raise students in this state that are remarkable. They know what has to be done, and if you explain it to them and work with them, they'll do it. And I told them time and again, they come from good stock, that over a century ago, Willa Cather described them in a book called Giants in the Earth. And so they couldn't slack off or anything, and they never did. Then I discovered that, as this is an old story about a frog sitting on a fence post. I'm sure everybody's heard it. And someone came up and said, "How'd you get up on that fence post?" And he looked at him and said, "A rabbit came up, unfortunately." Anyway, he said, "Well, everybody knows no frog got on a fence post all by itself." And so that's right. And as a university president, you don't do anything by yourself. I think of a university as a huge quilt or tapestry, and the president gets to sew it together or make it richer or more beautiful or change its pattern if it needs the pattern changed. And so that's how I approached this. They were all my sons and daughters. And so I want you to know that I looked around and realized we had a lot of students who wanted to come to college but couldn't. The finances were not possible for them. So I got together with the foundation under the leadership of Jerry Lohr, whom we thanked earlier in this meeting, and we started something called the Jackrabbit Guarantee, and it guaranteed you $1,000 a year towards your tuition for any student who met the requirements for entry and made their grades. And our enrollment grew like mad. The students hadn't been staying away because they wanted to. They were staying away because they didn't have the opportunity. So the Jackrabbit became a signature program for us. And when that was over, we decided that there were some other things that maybe we should have, that we had very bright students. Students in this state are educated well, they're trained well, they're brought up well, and they're smart. So we had students who could easily make it into graduate awards and wonderful fellowships, but we didn't have an honors college in the whole state. So we started an honors college, and with a great assistance from the Barb and Van Fishback people, part of our university family and community, we had enough money to put in the kinds of programs to give them the extra edge when they applied for scholarships and graduate positions. Well, that was helping some. We had lots more, and the smart ones were getting what they needed. And then it occurred to me that our faculty needed to get updated too. They never had opportunities to go to international places, and they didn't have the opportunities to be part of programs for leadership in higher education. And so we got busy on that as well. And it turned out that most of the international schools just would trade students with us. We'll take 10 of yours if you'll take 10 of ours. And so we were able to get a lot more international information. And one of the students is here tonight, and she and I went to China together and several other places because she was a leader. And so Amanda, will you stand and let us honor you? And And we both recall a young man sitting on the floor, as we were all sitting on the floor in an airport in China where we were been delayed forever. And he looked around and said, "You know, this experience has changed my whole life." And we said, that's what it was supposed to do. So anyway, that helped. We soon had our faculty competing for prized fellowships. And today we have 2 of our faculty are sitting presidents in the United States. So we're really pleased about them. One of them in our own state. So we then got to the point that it was apparent that Division II athletics was really struggling. Most of the very small colleges, which had been part of that terrific group of schools for years and years, were having financial and enrollment problems, and they simply couldn't go on much longer in athletics. Even Morningside had to drop out of our conference, our good conference that we all had loved. So I started looking around, and it occurred to me that in a few years, we weren't going to have anybody to play, and we weren't going to be attracting students who wanted to be able to play. And the worst part was some of our very best athletes in every sport, men and women, were going out of state, and they were getting all the honors and the awards, and their parents didn't get to go to see them as often, their brothers and sisters didn't get to watch. And that if we could find some way to get them back into the state and let them have their recognition at home and let them prosper at home and have opportunities for national awards at home, that would be a good thing. Not everybody thought so. So I began a quest to get our university into Division I, which we have done successfully, and they have done successfully, and give a South Dakota student a job to do, and he'll do it. We've won 2 national championships. National championships in Division I. I spoke with someone from the press tonight, and he said the day you came to our office and said you were going to move to Division I thought you'd lost your mind. But he doesn't now. He appreciates what we've all been able to do and how everybody has helped and how successful the students have been. We had them, they aren't first round draft picks, but they're getting salaries they could never have imagined before when they get picked up by the majors during that process in the spring. And not only that, they're eligible for awards, and we have had the offensive and defensive players of the year in the whole nation, which is wonderful for South Dakota. Nobody says, where's South Dakota? That's where all the good kids live. So, because they came from good stuff, giants in the earth. So, at any rate, I've chosen to stay in South Dakota, some of you know, and make my home here, because after all, you have all these wonderful students, and you have all these wonderful people. We just heard them tonight, and you even found a husband for me. Bob has since passed away, but I'll tell you, he loved being the first gentleman of South Dakota State with every ounce of his being, and we all did. Now, as an example of what South Dakota people do, I want you to know that I went to see Coach Stickelmeyer, who had coached our 2 national champions. And by the way, if you didn't see that game, I don't think anybody from Texas could buy a ticket because it was all blue. And anyhow, I went to him and I said, I would like to have maybe a jacket or a sweatshirt or a uniform or something from each of those teams. because I think on my table that would be special to people because it's all South Dakota, and I'm sure that they appreciate that. And he said, in typically South Dakota, "Oh, I can do a whole lot better than that." And he came out of his office and handed me the 2 gold rings full of diamonds that were the National Championship Division I football awards, the 2 years we won. And so tonight I was terrified. I said, "Can I insure them? Will Brinks go to the meeting with me? I'm not going to put them on the table." And he said, "No, but be sure to share them." So if anybody in this audience has a son who's played football in South Dakota, it doesn't have to be at SDSU, or played at football for a college in South Dakota, if you'll come up afterwards, we'll take your picture with one of those rings, and it will be our pleasure.